name's Lieutenant Colonel Erin Ball. I am a 64 Delta veterinary pathologist. I am the Chief of Comparative Pathology at WRAIR-AFRIMS, which is the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research, Armed Forces Research Institute of Medical Sciences. Our main mission at AFRIMS is kind of threefold. We do medical countermeasures testing. I'm in the veterinary medicine department, so part of my mission is preclinical testing. And then the other two parts of the mission are what are relevant here. We are involved in biosurveillance and partnership building. So a lot of that is in the global health engagement arena and also One Health, and those are very closely linked. A lot of the work that I've been doing, we don't have a specific position for global health engagement, but by the nature of veterinary pathology and my stated interest, have become the sort of de facto One Health, global health engagement AFRIMS representatives. One Health is the idea that human health, animal health, the environment are inextricably linked. And so when we're trying to deal with infectious disease emergence, we have to deal with them through the lens of all three of those things. And veterinarians have really been doing that for a long time, but in recent years, and definitely since COVID, I think the rest of the world has started to catch up, and so has the military. So there's been a real push towards approaching health from the One Health lens. And at AFRIMS, we do that in a big way through our biosurveillance efforts. So we're trying, as we apply for funding and work on projects now and in the future, to do that from a One Health perspective, where we make sure that we not only are looking at human surveillance in humans, but in animals, whether that's vectors like mosquitoes, whether that's the environment like wastewater surveillance, we're involved in that, or even animals like swine for swine influenza or poultry for avian influenza, etc. Since COVID and since Asia has kind of opened back up to travel and meetings and training, AFRIMS has been trying to step up or reinvigorate its global health engagement, capacity building, training activities in the region. What I really want to talk about today is a subject matter expert exchange that we did with the Armed Forces Philippines. We developed at AFRIMS a standardized engagement package that we call the Infectious Disease Research and Development Playbook. And it was actually spearheaded by our director, Colonel Levine. It's an idea he brought with him from his previous command in Japan. And basically what it is a menu, a standardized engagement package that's a menu of training that we offer for our regional partners. And they can basically pick from a menu of didactic lectures, hands-on training, and then it also includes roundtable discussions and opportunities for networking. There's also the .MLPF framework to try to figure out where you're starting from when you're using the standardized engagement package, and then your goal where you want to end up. So we call it the Infectious Disease Research and Development Playbook. And infectious disease is very specific, and it's very specific that it's research and development because that's our lane. We don't delve into clinical medicine either on the veterinary or the human side. So we just call it the playbook. And basically we can give this menu to our partners and they can pick and choose modules that they think would be useful for them based on theirs and our .MLPF assessment. It's meant to be longitudinal, so training modules will build on previous training modules. So for instance, the subject matter expert exchange that I'm discussing now, in the future, when we do it, if we do it, would build on previous trainings. So it sort of follows the crawl, walk, run progression that we like to use in the military. Based on regular visits between their senior leadership and ours, so the Armed Forces Philippines Surgeon General, Brigadier General Claire Navarro, who was the first female Surgeon General of the Armed Forces Philippines. We're in regular contact with her. She's visited AFRIMS many times, and we've also visited there. Additionally, the Health Services Commander, Colonel Paul Fajardo, and the Veterinary Corps Commander, Colonel Candelario. All three of them, through the various interactions that we regularly have, had expressed an interest in having a subject matter expert exchange, specifically to start out with the Veterinary Corps. The Armed Forces Philippines Veterinary Corps, similarly to our U.S. Veterinary Corps, is tasked with taking care of military working dogs. They have a food and water sanitation mission. They're involved in public health, such as rabies control. But one major difference is that, unlike the U.S. military, where we have entomologists, the Veterinary Corps in the Armed Forces Philippines is tasked with those entomology duties, so vector surveillance and control. So they identified a gap in training there, and that was one of the reasons that this subject matter expert exchange idea came into play, was to try to develop some training in that realm. The other portion is that the Health Services Command in the Armed Forces Philippines and Brigadier General Navarro had expressed an interest in developing a research and development program similar to what we have in the U.S. military as well. So we came up with this idea for the first ever subject matter expert exchange between the AFP and the AFRIMS. It was a 3-day thing, and it was focused on zoonotic infectious disease subjects as well as biomedical research, with the idea that eventually they want to stand up their own research and development program. So we did that in 2023. One of the biggest benefits, I'd say, is that it strengthened an existing positive relationship that we have with the Armed Forces Philippines, and it nested with Indo-PACOM strategic objectives as well. So specifically, in addition to the training and the subject matter expert exchanges, the networking that came out of it, there was actually several proposals that came out of this for scientific collaborations. And the idea there is that, with capacity building, training, and eventually getting, biosurveillance up and running by the Armed Forces Philippines Veterinary Corps and the rest of their Health Services Corps, that's a force multiplier for us when it comes to biosurveillance. So everything that we're doing and that we want to find out for our forces, who do a lot of work in the Philippines with exercises such as Balakatan. We have a lot of people rotating through the Philippines. That's just that many more people doing that biosurveillance that's important for our soldiers as well as the Armed Forces Philippines soldiers. So that's one really important benefit, I believe. Also, this was just kind of dipping our toes into the water, SME, and we have plans for future wider audience with some civilian participation as well as including not just the Veterinary Corps, but the Medical Corps and some public health officers as well, hopefully in fiscal year 25. So hopefully we can even build up those benefits even more for the future. Had to be pretty flexible with the schedule, even though we had built in a lot of downtime and we had a whole day for VIP meet and greets. There was a lot of senior leadership that had interest in this on the Armed Forces Philippines side, so we had to be pretty flexible with moving classes around, shortening them to be able to make room for opening and closing remarks and ceremonies by senior leadership, and that's pretty standard. So in the future, we would build in more time, more flexibility, more downtime. Maybe more networking time as well. One of the things we figured out with our AARs, our course evaluations, and our roundtable discussions is that the Armed Forces Philippines, although they intend to stand up an R&D program, so far they have very limited laboratory facilities. So we probably jumped the gun a little bit with the research and biomedical training side of things. Although everybody had an interest in it, they weren't to the point yet where that was usable training. So by the time there are lab facilities ready to go for an R&D program, that would probably be training that would have to be redone. So based on the course evaluations and the AARs and discussions with both the leadership and the course participants, the thing that the participants got the most out of was the entomology training, the hands-on vector surveillance, vector control training. We actually had, we went out and placed mosquito traps, collected mosquitoes around base, our entomology staff showed them how to identify the different types of mosquitoes, and then we discussed how you would implement a mosquito surveillance program and different types of mosquito control programs. So there was a request for more practical training such as that for the future. So when we plan future trainings, I think we're going to focus more on the infectious disease surveillance, zoonotic disease surveillance, and the stuff that doesn't require such a big, expensive laboratory footprint to get started. What I learned from them, they're very gung-ho and very ready to do the job they've been tasked with. They just haven't necessarily been given the tools they need. So the big gaps that we identified were the training and the materials and the tools needed for that kind of like entomology mission that our entomologists here in the US military do, but that the veterinarians are tasked with in the Armed Forces Philippines. We also learned a lot about pathogens and diseases that are endemic in the Philippines and in Southeast Asia that are a daily issue for them that we don't even have to consider. So like dengue, even rabies is a really big problem there. There's a lot of things. I really enjoy teaching. And I really, as a veterinary pathologist, firstly as a veterinarian and then as a veterinary pathologist, my education and training has naturally incorporated One Health, human and animal disease. My job in the military, even before any involvement in GHE, is working on animal models of human disease. There's been like a natural sort of melding of human infectious disease, animal disease, and then teaching, because for several years I was teaching after I completed the residency. I was retained to teach at the residencies. So the combination of all those things has sort of naturally led me to enjoy GHE. But to be honest, even when I was in vet school, I had a strong interest in it. And when I was in vet school, we did not have a strong program in it. And the things we did were sort of like all the no-nos of what I've learned since, what not to do. Like, don't go to Africa and just deworm things and then come home and think you did a good job. I'm not going to say where I went to vet school. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but I've learned a lot of lessons since then through the military, through these sorts of courses, and just through my education and training as a veterinary pathologist. And it naturally lends itself to this field, but I like teaching, I like capacity building, I like travel, I like interacting with other people in my field. I like spreading the word about what we're doing, why infectious disease emerges is important, all the things that are contributing to it, especially in today's environment and after the COVID pandemic. I think it's really important. And I think that veterinarians and veterinary pathologists and people in the research and development world are well placed to do that, specifically in the military.